Space, the final frontier. Well, okay, not really. All right, take two. Here in the Mitten State, welcome to Code 47, bringing you all things Star Trek, spanning the quadrants, the best thing since the neutral zone.
Hey everybody, we are back, the Code 47 podcast on the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network. This is episode 143 of our delightful little program. I'm Charlie Carden, your Trek Lord of West Michigan, joined as always by my number one, in the Star Trek sense anyway, Mr. Peter Stein. Peter, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All right, and we have a very special guest who, if you are a friend of the SFU network, you've met this gentleman before. You've heard his golden pipes over on the Secret Friends Unite program just recently. We have LeRon Dawkins from Boss Rush Network. Good afternoon, friend.
Heyo, how's it going?
It's going. We're excited to have you on board. And just like over at SFU, anytime we have somebody on the network for the first time, we like to kind of get over there. It's their geek origin story, so it's kind of big picture. But here we drill it down to what is your Star Trek? What is your Trekker? I prefer Trekker over Trekkie. That's because it's an expression Leonard Nimoy once used, so that's why I stick with it. What is your Trekker origin story? How did you get into all this?
My first memories of Star Trek I was like a really young boy. Because like I was born in the 70s. I'm not going to say how far back in the 70s and stuff like that, but my dad was the actual Trekker. And I don't know, there was something about like just back in the day, just like, you know, like he was always watching it whenever it was on reruns and stuff like that. And it was just one of those things that I started getting into because I just wanted to hang out and spend time with my dad. I want to say I was at least 5-6 years old. I remember having earliest memories. As a matter of fact, I even remember the very first episode that I remember watching with him. That was The Devil in the Dark. TOS.
Ooh, yeah. Mine ended up being the second pilot. I remember seeing it on TV.
You saw Where No Man Is Gone before. Okay.
Yeah, sure did. Yeah, TV 50 in WKBD in Detroit, my hometown. Mm-hmm. And I was born in the late 70s myself, so this was the early 80s. And yeah, it was the thing I remember very clearly from that is the fight scene at the end. I remember that very clearly. Yeah. Because again, when you're 6, you're like, oh, it's two guys having a fist fight. It's something that, you know, when you're already watching G.I. Joe and He-Man and you love Star Wars, that clicks, right? So,
definitely.
Well, cool. All right. Well, we will get right on into it. We have a big show today. We are talking about the first Star Trek motion picture since 2013. Wasn't Star Trek Beyond the last Star Trek movie?
That was in
2016.
Yeah, 16. I was like 13 sounds a little too far back.
So we are 9 years, and this is the first
Into Darkness.
Yeah, the first Star Trek television film is Section 31. We're going to get into that in a bit. But first, we got to do that paying the bills thing, and we also have an exciting Patreon giveaway. As you know, the folks over on our Patreon Secret Friend Squad over at patreon.com/secretfriendsunite do get the best of the best. You get early shows like this one. It always drops on a Saturday or Sunday night instead of a Monday night. So you get to get us 24 hours early, sometimes more. Exclusive shows with no ads, and all other kinds of Discord benefits, 7 days for free, and then as little as $2 a month. To stay on board, as I like to say, that's a lot of entertainment for $2. These fine folks are getting the best of the best. My buddy Derek Trevelyan, the figure dude here in Grand Rapids. Francie, who does my wife's hair, great lady. She loves our Bad Movies podcast. Luke Lore, Mr. Xbox Expansion Pass, and my great uncle Tim. On the Friends with Benefits level, John Sedorf, the Phoenix Sisters Entertainment, Kelly and Crayley. Brendan Myers, Corey and HD, our friend Matthew Keel, my journalist buddy, Kurt Krug, LeRon, in the pre-roll, you were talking about how do you meet all these famous people? Kurt has hooked me up with some of these great interviews that we've done over on our Patreon exclusive Spotlight program. And Tanya Lee, who is our friend down south, who guested with us a few weeks back here on this program. And we got a 1-2 punch. Our secret friend, Super Squad, the awesome Nias family of the Twin Cities, Sean, Stella, and Henry, are not only our top tier Patreons, but thanks to them, we are actually giving away 5 annual Friends with Benefits Patreon subscriptions, which get you access to this great content. You'll get all the exclusive content for 1 year. All you have to do to enter to win is subscribe and comment on one of our YouTube videos. The address being, youtube.com/secretfriendsunite, or rather just search for it, because you know what? That was not put in my show notes. So I'm going to have to fix that for next time. So you can do that, or you can rate our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Drop us a DM on Blue Sky at Secret Friends Unite, Instagram, secret.friends.unite, or email secretfriendsunite@gmail.com with a screenshot of your review and or the YouTube sub comment and your username, and you will be entered. We will announce the winners on Tuesday, March the 4th. So you've got just over a month to get involved with that. So yeah, we would love to have you join us. So that'd be totally awesome. So cool. All right. Well, let's talk about some actual Star Trek instead of some actual blah, 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 blah. We have a news story kind of for the first time in a long time. The kind of follow-on, not that I know they're going to be at all related, to Lower Decks, meaning a comedic Star Trek program, will be live action, and it will have Tawny Newsome and her writing partner, I think it's Justin Simeon. So I'm scrolling down. I got Justin Simeon. There's no S in it. We did get an update on that from Alex Kurtzman. This is promising to be the two of them, so Newsom and Simeon, in the middle of breaking a story. Says he's very excited. The concept has shifted a bit since it was discussed last summer, and it's finding a way to do Trek in a workplace comedy type tone. Now, admit it, if it was 10 years ago and you heard this pitch, having never seen Lower Decks, would you think it could work? I mean, or would it seem ridiculous to you? What do you guys think?
It would seem absolutely ridiculous to me because
I agree.
The reason why I say that is because, like, I've been alive for almost the entire lifetime of Star Trek. If we just combined it all together, like if nothing ever got canceled and there was no gaps and everything, I've been alive as long as Star Trek has been around and stuff like that. But given that, I want to say that I love like the golden era of Star Trek, especially like the TNG DS9 Voyager run. The golden era. Yeah, it honestly set the pulse for Star Trek and stuff like that. And even Enterprise to an extent, because Enterprise is prequel, I don't discount prequels at all. In all honesty, I'm a fan. I love the work and stuff like that. But
yeah.
Given my pedigree in Star Trek and stuff like that, if they pitched that, after, before like the new age of Star Trek happened and stuff like that, I'd be like, what are they thinking? It would sound absolutely wild and stuff like that. Lower Decks, though, basically expanded, like my appreciation for it and all. And this is even for me reading comic books, like, the actual beta canon, like novels and stuff like that. This would have been like, what? I don't know, stuff like that. But,
Yeah.
I'm at a point now where I'm open-minded enough to understand that, and also I write. So, I understand, like, it's not always going to be like philosophical space opera-y, like, type deals, maybe we'll go light on technobabble and stuff. So, I appreciate that. I also appreciate that, like, we only get like a bird's eye view of certain things that happen whenever we watch any episode of Star Trek. It doesn't matter what series it is and stuff like that. So,
yeah.
So, we're only getting the perspective of one type. And, I feel like Voyager started doing things a little bit differently. We got different perspectives about the life of people in the Federation and Starfleet and stuff like that. And it helped. I think Voyager probably brought in a lot more horizons, which a lot of people back then, the jumping on point for Star Trek was Voyager. Now the jumping on point is kind of all over the place. We can jump on any point in Star Trek. So, yeah. This would have been like a WTF for me, but
Yeah,
You
for
know,
sure. Yeah.
I'm now like it in 2025. You know, like I'm now like bring it on. Let's see what we got.
I like it. I like it. Peter, your thoughts?
Um, I'm still a little leery, not because of who's writing it,
Yeah,
just
true.
because. Oh, this is like, I guess, full disclaimer. I'm not a big fan of those kinds of shows, like The Office or Parks and Rec or anything like that. They're just
Whoops, sorry about that tiny glitch. All right, Peter, you were saying?
so. I'm still a little leery of it. It's not because of who's writing it. I know that Tawny Newsome can come up with some fun stuff. I don't really know much about the other guy,
Yeah,
so I can't
same.
really speak to that. But I've just never really been a fan of the style of stuff that it seems like they're going for with this.
Yeah.
When you say workplace comedy, that makes me think of The Office or Parks and Rec or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's a type of show that I can watch clips, but I cannot sit and watch a whole episode because I die of cringe inside.
The Office is particularly tough with that.
I just can't do it.
As good of a job as Steve Carell does, it's just his character.
Yeah, and it's like I said, it has nothing to do with like the writers or the actors or whatever. It's just I can't do it.
Yeah, I know. I totally understand.
So it's like it could work, but if that's the format that we're going for, I don't know.
Yeah. And what we're going to talk about in our next segment here is another one of those that when it broke originally, we were like, they could be going in a new direction. It's about this. It's going to be a TV movie. Originally it was going to be a show. And it delivered something that was apart from what we typically expect. And we'll talk about in a moment exactly what that means. But, I've met Tawny on a few different occasions, twice on the cruise at Star Trek Las Vegas. And just overall, she's a wonderful person. I loved how she played the role of Beckett Mariner. And she's also very involved in Starfleet Academy because she's in that writer's room. So, I'm being cautiously optimistic about this, which admittedly, what we're going to talk about in a moment here with the Section 31 film, Peter and I were somewhat dubious in the long run. So I'm cautiously optimistic, but I am especially prepared for, hey, we're going in a new direction and maybe it's not going to work out. But we'll see. But it is, it's different. But I'm a big sitcom guy. I always have been. So that part of it doesn't
I'm not opposed to trying new things or doing something else in the universe or seeing things outside of the Starfleet lens.
Yeah.
It's just not my kind of thing.
I hear
Workplace comedy.
Let me add a caveat to what I talked about earlier. I'm totally with you on that one as far as like that environment. But I swear, like when they were pitching Lower Decks, I was like, I don't know if this is going to work. And to be honest with you, it took Lower Decks the entire first season for me to warm up. And if I'm being honest, I felt like Lower Decks didn't hit that stride until like halfway through the second season.
That's fair. I think that's fair.
Yeah, Lower Decks became that show that I wound up being excited about whenever like new episodes were coming or when they were premiering the new season and stuff like that, because I feel like they leaned in too much into like the tropes of Star Trek, which I understand, I think that was what their original goal was to do. It was always just supposed to be like some fluff, Star Trek piece and stuff like that. But I think eventually, like when they heard people's like we like this, but where's the Star Trek? That's when like we finally got episodic, serialized episodes and stuff like that. It still had the comedy and the humor and stuff like that. But it was also Star Trek. Now with this new show, I don't know if it's anything like for example, the Star Trek, the Trouble with Edward. I think we're gonna be all right.
I didn't like that one, so I don't know. I
enjoyed it because I love H. John Benjamin. That's Archer. But that was it was kind of dumb comedy, which is something like my wife April does not care for. So I get but it's like there's certain movies that she's just I won't even see if we're watching it. It's like an Idiocracy or something. She wouldn't even crack a smile. You know what I mean? So it's just there's some people who just don't. They take their comedy a little different. So anyway, we don't have any rock solid news about this, and Paramount hasn't even announced that this show has a green light. And for God's sakes, we don't even know when Strange New Worlds season 3 will come on. So that's why we don't talk about the news very much.
We don't have a date for Strange New Worlds yet?
No, we do not. We do
'Cause,
not. It's
It's
spring 2025.
hypothetically later this year, but that's
Spring
not
2025 or
Okay.
2025. You're seeing my air quotes if you're watching this on YouTube. So anyway, we will move on from this, but as there's more news, we will jump back and obviously report more upon it. So, okay, now we're going to talk about Section 31. We're going to go spoiler free in the first section. And so if you're listening and then want to stop and jump forward because you haven't seen it yet, you may want to listen to our first spoiler portion, turn us off, go watch it if you haven't, though I'm imagining if you listen to the show, you probably have. And then we're gonna go spoiler filled with commentary in the second portion. But Peter, if you want to read the first paragraph, I will read the second paragraph of the description of the show. Go for it.
Section 31 is a 2025 science fiction television film directed by Olatunde Usunasmi.
You got me there.
Not liking that for some reason.
He's I was going to say, and he's very big involved in the current regime that is running Star Trek. He was a co-exec of, I think, Discovery and maybe some of the other programs that are coming up. So he's part of the current zeitgeist. He's not just some dude they pulled in to direct it, because that's what they did with Nemesis. They grabbed some guy and we got Nemesis.
So I apologize that I butchered the name, but we're going there. Written by Craig Sweeney for the streaming service Paramount Plus, obviously. It is the first television film and the 14th film overall in the Star Trek franchise, and part of Alex Kurtzman's expanded Star Trek universe. A spin-off from the series Star Trek Discovery, the film is set in the franchise's lost era between the original series films and The Next Generation. It follows Mirror Philippa Georgiou as she works with Section 31, a secret division of Starfleet tasked with protecting the United Federation of Planets. And, according to the plot, she must face the sins of her past.
Michelle Yeoh is Georgiou, reprising her role from Discovery. A development on a spin-off series with Yeoh was confirmed in January 2019, but with delayed production from COVID-19, a different Discovery spin-off series, Strange New Worlds, was then prioritized. Section 31 was redeveloped into a film, which was announced in April of 2023. I'm not even going to necessarily try some of these names. No, actually, you know what? They don't look that bad. Omari Hardwick, Sam Richardson, Detroit native, Robert Kaczynski, Casey Roll, Sven Roygranek, James Hiroyuki Liao, Humberly Gonzalez, and Joe Pingyu also star. Section 31 was released on Paramount Plus on January 24th, 2025. It received generally negative reviews, but we're going to talk about our opinions about that. We're not going to try to be nasty from the jump. I'm going to toss out a couple of spoiler-free fun facts. I see LeRon cracking up over there. I have no idea if we're all. I know Peter and I have the same mind, but I don't know how you feel. But we're going to get there. We don't want to put the cart before the horse. Continuity-wise, this is the first movie to be wholly set in the 24th century since Star Trek Nemesis, though Spock Prime shares events that occurred in the 24th century of the Prime universe with alternate reality James Kirk via a mind meld in 2009's Star Trek film. Section 31 film establishes its main story takes place on this gets in my craw, but we'll talk about this later. Starbase 1292.4 in the early 24th century. If we follow the continuity of the Star Trek The Next Generation format, this would put the movie in 2324.
April 17th. 2324.
Good Lord, man. And thus be 40 years before the events of TNG, a counter at Farpoint, which takes place in 2364. I'll bitch more about star dates later. This would also set the event 20 years before the Battle of Narendra 3, when we actually meet Rachel Garrett, who is the captain of the USS Enterprise C, and in our continuity, perishes in that conflict. So, this is currently, as of this morning, pulling a 19% on the tomato meter with 42 reviews and 16% on the popcorn meter with 1,000 plus ratings from viewers just like you. So, I'm just going to say we'll have our thoughts, and then I do actually have finally some comments from the people in our listening gallery. So,
nice.
All right, so I do have notes, but I'm not going to sit here and read through my notes. Let's just start talking about, we don't have to go through it bit by bit. This is, however, the portion of the show where things get spoilery. We're going full spoilers. So if you've not watched it, give it a pause, jump forward, come back when you've seen it, or just jump forward to talk about Deep Space Nine. So, LeRon, you are our esteemed guest, and I open it up to you to tell us how you felt about Section 31. Go nuts.
Okay. All right. So I'm not sure if I want to reveal my letter grade yet, but I will say that just from a Star Trek fan perspective and stuff like that, I enjoyed the movie. It was popcorny, just to say the most. Like, I'm also one of these people. I'm pretty objective about things and stuff like that. I understand Section 31 probably had the makings of a solid start, when it was supposed to be a series and stuff like that. And then it had to shift to a movie because, in my opinion, Paramount and the powers that be, dragged their feet, about Michelle Yeoh and her rise to fame, even though, like, I've known about Michelle Yeoh for 30 years at this point now and stuff like that, but she got her flowers of Everything Everywhere All at Once now, and she just seemed to propel, and stuff like that, going in, I knew all that, and also I understand, we not only did we have to like change from it being a series to a movie because Michelle Yeoh is just busy, busy, stuff like that,
and that's great. And she's in her 60s, which is spectacular that someone can have it, and especially let's face it, a woman, because the industry, it can be very biased. Get that kind of success later in her career. Fair, not fair. It's not fair at all.
Oh, it's not fair.
That is definitely so. Absolutely spectacular that she's able to move forward with that. So, please continue. I'm sorry.
But also, like, I think we also failed to realize there was a writer's strike in the middle of all this production too and stuff like that. And everyone knows that whenever writer's strike happens, like, everybody's production just gets effed the hell up,
Right.
Everything, true. Movies, TV shows, like, anything that requires a Screen Actors Guild, it gets effed up and stuff like that. Yeah. So knowing that when I woke up that Friday morning and watched the film and stuff like that, I didn't have any expectations for it. But I mean, there was a part of me, I was like, you know what? I'm looking forward to a good Star Trek movie, but I didn't have any real expectations for it because I didn't know what we're going to get, stuff like that. So I was able to, I had problems with the movie. Yes, I did. But I was also not, I was able to not lambast it, definitely not lambast the talent, the people behind it that put the hard work into it, getting it done and stuff like that. Cause it could have been canceled. And you know what? I feel like the community would have been more pissed that it got canceled than if we just got it, in whatever format we got it in.
I mean, and there's precedent for that because look at the Star Wars community right now with this rash of 4, 5, 6 different. Now there's going to be a trilogy from so and so. Now there's going to be the X-Wing movie from Patty Jenkins. Now it's going to be Rian Johnson's going to have a trilogy. Then before that, it was Kevin Feige's going to have a trilogy. And the Star Wars film fan community became very jaded behind. I'll believe it's a Star Wars movie when I'm sitting in the theater and I see the Star Wars flying away from me in the opening crawl. Yeah. Star Trek doesn't quite have. Well, I mean, Star Trek, the JJ crew kind of has developed that legacy because it'd be like, we're going to have Star Trek 4 now, and now it's been 9 years since that last film came out. Like, it's coming back. It's this. It's that. It's blah 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 blah. You know what I mean? So there's definitely merit, and you're right. If this was something I feel like happened all the time, there's no doubt. Like if they're like, and now we're announcing blank, but there haven't been a ton of, in the history of Star Trek, there haven't been a ton of really shelved projects that people have developed a callus.
The only real one that got shelved that people really know about is Phase 2, and that developed into the film. Right. So that's not really the same thing.
Yeah, and again, Star Trek 6 was born out of doing a Starfleet Academy with a young Kirk, Spock, and McCoy instead. And now there's going to be a Star Trek Academy
Insurrection
program.
was almost that at the beginning too.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's not been like, and of course we're also talking about stuff before we had the 24 news hour site, 24 a day, 365 news cycle of the internet, where it's like there's this rumor that, and then, and now it's really happening. And now, this thing shut it down, and we've had COVID, and we've had a writer strike, and it's really tossed things all up in to craziness. So, okay. Let's continue with first impressions, and then we can break it down a little bit more. Peter, I know where we're going with this, but you're up.
Brace yourselves.
But not for a surprise.
Yeah, for any of you who have listened to me before, you've been hearing my skepticism ever since the first trailer came out. Let's just say that I was not surprised by pretty much anything that happened in this film. I was surprised that Rachel Garrett never fired her phaser. That kind of annoyed me.
I know, and that was the one thing you were super excited about.
That was the one thing I was excited about was her phaser.
Yeah, because there was a magazine cover about 2 months ago where you had all of them standing around a circle, and she had her weapon drawn, and it looked like a Star Trek II phaser-ish. Yeah.
Yeah, it looked like a proper development of a weapon. So,
right.
So for those of you who care, that made me sad.
I care, Peter. I care. I absolutely care.
But overall, this movie felt to me like it was rushed and didn't know what it wanted to do. Like there were elements that was like, okay, I could see where that could be interesting. Okay, I could see where that was going, or that's fascinating. But there were like some key elements that they either forgot or conveniently buried, like the Stardate positioning of where we are in the timeline and its relation to the Mirror Universe and the Cardassian Klingon Union. Like that's a problem.
It's a big problem. It's a big problem. And for some context, if you wondered about the timing, this took place during the time that Picard was at the Academy. He was that young.
Picard graduated. This is 24.
27.
I was about to say he graduated 3 years from now.
Yeah.
So the people that we know, some of them are alive from TNG, but this is pretty early on. This is the Lost Era.
Yeah.
And I was also mildly disappointed that we didn't get to see Garrett in the Monster Maroon. Like you had an option at the very end of the film.
Let's be perfectly honest; they would have fucked that up, and and think about how angry that you and I would have burned something down.
I mean, we saw my reaction at the season 1 finale of Strange New Worlds when they showed us.
And the thing is, we all bought those anyway. Yeah, there is a uniform made of that. LeRon, we could talk off book, but I can help you out with uniforms. But
I was about to say I had no problem with Pike's uniform in the finale. Yeah, we'll talk about that.
The real quick one, microprint. Hate it.
Yeah,
that's
it. Because
I understand
because it's become such a trend. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
so,
I understand.
Anyway, Peter, please continue. I'm sorry.
So there was the movie didn't really know what it wanted to be, and for me the biggest problem was there didn't really see, from my understanding of how stories get told, there wasn't a compelling character arc for Georgiou.
Mm-hmm.
It just didn't work for me. There wasn't like a big inciting moment. There was the oh shit moment, but there wasn't like there was like a very, very brief sort of catharsis near the end of the film, but it was kind of brushed over and didn't really work. So that didn't really work. And then there was like also some attempted character development with Garrett, which she has a stick that Garrus Vakarian would be proud of in Yesterday's Enterprise. So to have her like let loose in this one so that she learns to let loose was just a little... I don't think we watched the same episode, folks.
Yeah, she learned to let loose so that she can turn around and learn to not let loose. And again, Garrett's character, when we first meet her, it's a 43-minute episode of which she appears in a lot of it. Look at this. That's a first, a hand raise. Ron, by all means, please.
I tried my best because I also moderate a couple of podcasts, so I tried my best not to always interject myself in there. But
that's fair. That's good.
That's the one thing. That's the one thing about this movie that also got to me. I'm it's not that I failed to understand this, but it's more like I'm definitely understanding now that the problem that we have is, and this can be both a good and a bad problem to have with Star Trek. in its 50 years now. Is
60,
that we've
almost 60.
yeah, almost 60. Yeah. Well, we've got people there in the writers' room that, like, yeah, they've probably done a little bit of research to just make sure they knew what's up with these characters, but they didn't do enough research to know like what's the core of these characters and stuff like that, and stuff like that. Like I was also with you guys about that Rachel Garrett never firing her phaser. I was also,
Right.
Like, why didn't we see, if she's representing Starfleet, we should at least seen her at some point in her Starfleet uniform. It didn't,
Right.
it didn't have to be
or even just have her flash a badge.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because we know Starfleet security had badges back in the day, stuff like that,
Yeah, or she could have had, they could have broke out, she could have had a video call with her CO or somebody who is part of her unit, something that would make it feel like Starfleet, where instead, and this was in my notes, it's particularly in the first part of the movie, there's a whole Mean Girl sequence where they're just mocking the shit out of her for being a part of Starfleet. Oh, well, don't get your prime directives in a bunch and I just, it's like, okay, you made your point, but they come back and they do it more than once.
Yeah.
So it's like, they really got to keep twisting the knife.
Feel like a Mean Girls clique rather than a super evil organization that does really shady crap.
Right, mm-hmm. Exactly. They just seem kind of dickish, and you don't really feel like they're cool and mysterious. You just feel like they're just really being assholes. And that's
it's a high school locker room, not spies.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah. Because ultimately, I feel like the Starfleet Section 31 interaction. I'm like, okay, yeah, you guys are showing a divide, but like technically, it's not really supposed to be a divide because, like, Section 31 just feels like they're the Black Ops team that's making sure the Federation does not spin off the rails. And right. I'm not sure. The movie established that Starfleet still knows about them at that point. So going into that era, I guess by the time we get to Benjamin Sisko taking control of DS9,
they're really in the background by that point. Where in Discovery they were like, we've got our own ship and we have our own special communicators and yada 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 and. Yep. I took a lot of notes. As I said, I'm not going to blast through my notes, but I got to be honest with you. There was absolutely nothing about this that worked for me in the slightest. And everything that you guys have said is true about the fact that, and what other people in some of the notes that we have reflect, is that this was a season, which in the current parlance in streaming world means 10 episodes. So this was 10 episodes jammed down into 95 minutes. So that's including credits. And that's including credits. So you had a couple of characters that die early on. You have a character who dies very early on. That's Melly, who's a Deltan. The first Deltan I feel like we've seen in a very long time. Have we seen another Deltan since Ilea?
Yeah. Picard second season.
Oh, I forget.
Oh, yeah.
I think we've also seen one or two on lower decks for grins and
there
giggles.
You go. But this is the first character we've really had that has had anything to do. But she's there and she dies in a firefight for absolutely no good reason. And they give her an extended disintegrating screaming scene. I'm like, that really felt super unnecessary. The Zeph character, the guy in the mech suit, drove me nuts. He's just like, hey man, you're making fun of the suit. When you're making fun of the suit, you're making fun of me. Peter was right. We're right back in the locker room. Everybody's kind of being a teenage dirtbag. It's just, and the bad accent guy, the Men in Black dude who's driving the Vulcan body. Oh, no. Just no. That's a no.
Thankfully, I saw something on that. Like he had voiced opinions about using that accent and stuff like that, and they just had no time to get him an actual vocal coach. They just had no time.
My God, I mean, his accent, he's trying to ape an Irish accent, but it's going up and it's down, it's going sideways. At the very end of it being that, as I said, we're not going to walk necessarily through the plot. It is, however, revealed that guy, the little alien guy who's driving that body, he's the villain. He's in cahoots with the bad guy who was Giorgio's childhood crush.
Who back in the mirror, older.
Back in the mirror universe. So basically the mirror universe stuff and the bulk of the story are separated by about 60 of our years, because they said 3 of your weeks later, they make it sound like they tell time differently than we do. So maybe that's how they're trying to get around it. And I do understand, and his name was Sem? What was the San? He was originally, I also don't understand how hierarchy of the empire works.
Oh, that drove me absolutely up a wall.
Somebody becomes the emperor or empress
Through a contest in this
doing American
thing.
Gladiators.
Right.
Yeah, they do. And then somebody crowns them that. I'm like, no, in the Terran Empire from TOS, if you wanted somebody's job, you just killed them. You didn't have a big ceremony where you were like, and here's your crown. You're like, here's my knife. That's how stuff works.
I also had some I had some situations about that because but then again, it also makes sense. Like, you know, like it could become all out warfare. But then again, like it kind of negated itself. You know, like when we look at Discovery, Lorca was trying to depose Giorgio. You know,
right? Exactly. So even in the Discovery mirror universe canon, what happened here makes no sense.
I think if we like look at it, because I mean, again, this is whatever. But if we look at the Terran Empire through the lens of the Roman Empire, which is what they were going for, there is a legitimate form of succession that can happen, but then also you can just get straight up murdered by anybody and get taken over from. So if we keep that in the back of our mind, that it functions like the Roman Empire, it can function without like, oh, everyone stabs everyone and that's just how it happens. There can be like a peaceful transition of power at points.
Looks like LeRon's having an epiphany. Break it down for us.
Because so after Section 31 movie, like, you know, after I watched it, of course I spent the entire weekend watching the Section 31 arc of Discovery season 1, and I just remembered something. It was the second or third episode of season 2 of Discovery. Giorgio said something about like when her mother would have to take care of kids. I was like, wait a minute.
Oh, so they stepped on their own continuity, is what you're saying.
This is something that bothers me about new Star Trek, where they talk. This is going to sound mean. I don't mean it to be mean. But
mean girl. He's a mean girl now.
But you have people crap on people like me who like how things work in canon, and then step on your own canon, and it's brand new, and it's like. You have this much to work with. I have this much to work with.
Right.
I try to make this work. You make fun of me for this. You can't make this work.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, mean girl.
I'm the same way. I feel like canon should be the actual rails everything stands on. You know, like
it's the boundaries of the sandbox. Play in it.
If you're gonna break canon in a way that does not hurt, like, you know, the entire overall story arc. You know, do it like that. You know, don't do something that, you know, basically will like. The fandom is what it is. Like the fandom's like all over the spectrum as far as like how they feel about Star Trek and stuff like that. And the one thing I think that the entire fandom just wants is just don't break our brains trying to like create the show. Don't do that.
Tell us a story that someone can follow, whether you're a canonista like Peter and myself, or you're just somebody who has Paramount Plus and said, oh, there's a Star Trek something. And, you know, I've never really watched Star Trek, and that has Michelle Yeoh, and I like Michelle Yeoh. I'm just going to go ahead and turn this on because that's what they're trying to shoot for. So to wrap up my thought about Sand, so he faked his own death in what was the 2250s of the Discovery timeline in the Terran universe. He then somehow
de-age her did work.
He somehow raised a power base, managed to steal basically the MacGuffin of the film. This was a MacGuffin quest. That was another way to look at the movie, because they were trying to track down the Godsend, which they really needed to they took a play on words on that, and just they riffed on it, and I thought it was almost unwatchable.
For 5 minutes.
For 5 minutes.
6-year-olds.
Yes, exactly. It was kind of, and then so he managed to get a fancy ship, steal this thing, somehow know that an ion storm could take him into another universe, but also jump 60 years forward because he knows Giorgio was there and not in the 2250s of our universe, because she had gone to 32nd century, came back to the past at some juncture. That would have been, where was it back then? And she's 60. So she's now 120 years old in the course of this film. It's just, there's too much mathing and too much of a plot. Like how did Sand know to do that? How did he pull it off? And how did in the end of it when you have your very climactic CGI fest. And it was basically a kung fu fighting punch 'em up at the end between Giorgio and San.
It felt
But
kind of like a Bourne movie with how much the camera was moving.
yeah, and it was explosions, and it was dark and it was light, and it was dark and it was light, and it looks like they're going to die right at she and I call the second guy who's the second star of this, who is he's an augment from the 21st century, but he's also ageless. Yeah, Peter. I think Peter's going to have an embolism. But he and Giorgio escape at the last minute, and the Godsend and Sand ship fly into the thing, and it detonates. But instead of destroying everybody, it just closes the passageway. So it's like, wow. We could keep grinding things into the ground, and I think that that's a bad idea.
I will say the one thing that I really want to say about the augment dude. He said he was from the 20th century, but from another planet.
Wait, did he say
Earth.
that?
Yes, he did. And I was just so my notes are he's from the 20th century. Okay, the eugenics wars. Okay. Didn't Strange New Worlds rewrite that
pushed it
century?
forward. Yeah, pushed it forward.
Yeah, I did.
But the augments took his planet. Okay, we had barely made it to the moon in the 60s in the 20th century.
There wasn't life on other planets. There certainly wasn't.
And then it was like, and then I was re-engineered to be an augment. They can't even do that in the 24th century. So,
well, it was just Ash Tyler and the Klingons thing all over again. We talked about
but they didn't redo
his,
but they couldn't redo his, like give him powers and stuff. So you can't rewrite genetics like that, especially not in the 21st century.
So many
not of a living organism, of like if it's a very simple like.
Right.
Not much. Okay, fine. But if you're talking like a complex organism that has already lived a decent amount of time, you can't just like, here's an RNA strand and your genetics are all rewritten.
Yeah.
That's not how genetics work.
I mean, so very much of this was a kind of Star Trek Mad Libs. It was like a blank happens blank, and then they took things that felt very Star Trek. They'll Easter egg the name of a planet, or they'll do this thing, and they'll stick in the Delton characters because hey, that's something or they stuck in the Frank Gorshin black on one side, white on white side character from Believe Sharon. That was
the
it.
The Sharon.
Yeah, the Sharon. Yeah. So they but it was just like plugging things in variously. So let's.
Buzz felt like the. I made a joke before I knew he was operated by a robot, that he was a robot body, but I was like, oh, look, it's the laughing Vulcan and his dog.
Right, exactly. Oh, my God.
They didn't quite have the dog unless you count him as the dog. So it's like, it's almost like, but I don't think that anyone in the writer's room would have known that really niche reference.
Yeah. Very inside baseball. Well, before we do, LeRon, we also often do a 1 through 10. You had said you had a letter grade. Before we get there, let's have any parting thoughts before we give our actual rating. So we'll go back in the same way. LeRon, take us through your wrapping it up evaluation.
Okay, so ultimately, it's Here's where I wound up being conflicted because I had quite a few people that knew I was a Trekkie that I knew like they've never seen Star Trek before. They were calling me over the weekend because they watched Section 31. They had so many questions for me, and I thought it was going to be so many questions about like how batshit the movie was, but it was more like, hey, can you explain this, and that? And so all of a sudden, like I gave 3 different people like three different areas of Star Trek they can like just check out and watch, across like Plus and whatnot. And so now they're off doing homework and stuff, and like it's like
that's
wow.
Great.
Like
that's great.
I didn't expect Section 31 to do that, but at the same time, like I've always been one of those guys. Like like if you ever have a question for me about Star Trek and stuff like that, ask me and I'll let you know something.
So, same here.
So this was by the time we got the Monday or Tuesday following the premiere and stuff, I was now conflicted. because it was more like, man, like this is not a movie I would want to introduce people. This is not a project I want to introduce people to Star Trek into. But at the same time, people are going out there, they're finding it because they either have access to Paramount Plus.
It's right in front of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's being promoted. You're seeing commercials in front of stuff and
Yeah.
on other streamers that, they bought ad time. So they're promoting the shit out of it. Absolutely.
Yeah. So my final thoughts about Section 31, the movie, is it could have been better. But if we're gonna look at it as like it's getting new people into Star Trek, then it probably did the job it was supposed to do in the first place. Me personally, like I said, I was entertained by it, but of course, for every laugh and haha I got out of it, there was definitely an eye roll or a groan, because
That's fair.
like we're nearly 1,000 episodes of TV Star Trek now.
Yeah,
and I've seen all of it and stuff like that. And I'm strict, but at the same time, I'm not. I will die on the Star Trek hill. Well, I will die on the Star Trek hill, but not the way.
We all will, and we all will in a certain way. People who do this, people who get and have recorded conversation about Star Trek and then put it out there for the world to listen to. It's a thick and thin. We're gonna like things better than we like other things, but we're gonna watch everything at least once, and this was once for me.
Yeah. So this movie needed some work, and I feel like the runtime of it was 130
minutes.
Yeah, 95 minutes.
Yeah, 95 minutes. I feel like if they had probably tacked on about 20 more minutes, they probably could have polished up some of the stuff that us Trekkers are having questions and concerns about and stuff like that. But unfortunately, I know what goes on behind the scenes, behind just production and stuff like that. So yeah. My final thoughts are it needed more polish, but at the same time, I don't feel like they could have delayed this anymore. They had to get it out.
Okay, yeah, fair. What's your rating? Go 1 to 10.
1 to 10, 6.5.
6.5. Wow.
6.5. 6.5.
That's going to be the very highest of any of us. I get feeling.
Oh, I'm pretty sure because anything below a 7 for me, because I will usually give anything a 7, and then go up, anything below a 7, that's suspect. This is not a 0 or a 1. This is not. I mean, for the first TV movie, and technically, all those Voyager 2-parters, that was technically movies, but whatever,
I mean, we have an entire section of this show, and it's going to be over a year from now because Peter and I are very close to finishing talking about every single episode of the show. When we get done, we're going to have a while of a best of, and then we're going to get into the 2-parters. So the second part of our show will just be 2-parts, and you'll be back on with us for at least.
Good, because season 7 had 3 2-parters.
And we're gonna handle every 2-parter that happened, but that's coming up a couple of years from now.
So I give it a 6.5 because 6.5. It scratched the Star Trek itch for me, because I'm always one of those people. I'm thirsty for new Star Trek content. So it's scratch the itch. They just did a lot. They wasted the characters, especially especially 2 characters that were already primarily established across other series and stuff like that. There is so much stuff we could have done with Philippa. There's so much stuff, but I feel like if this had been a 2-season series of 10 plus episodes, maybe
20 episodes. 20 episodes.
This would not have been a problem.
They could have stretched it. Yeah, Peter, let's have it.
I think this movie is a dumpster fire with napalm underwater.
It's 2020 the movie.
So really my problems are that some of it's probably because they were rushing to get through, but there was just bad character development. Like all of Giorgio's character development from Discovery season 4 was just gone.
Yeah.
Which we all know my feelings about Discovery, but that just didn't feel right. You just can't wipe away character development.
Right.
So I didn't like that. I didn't like the Garrett stuff with character. The casting was fine. I didn't mind that. But I didn't like the character development there. The movie tripped over itself way too many times, didn't know where it was going, killed off characters kind of haphazardly because it was like, we want to make this intriguey, and so we're going to off people so that you don't know, even though you definitely know who the bad guy is. already.
Right.
Like from the beginning, I was like, it's her love interest from this moment, and it's the other dude.
Right. It's
Okay.
that accent can't cover up his evilness. Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
it was just like for all of the talent that was on this one, it's similar. And this is giving 5 a bad name, but it feels like Star Trek 5, where like there were a lot of good ideas behind it, a lot of talented people involved,
And just it just doesn't
and then it
coalesce.
just didn't work.
Yeah.
In part because of circumstances quite beyond their control. Like
Right.
5 had studio interference amongst other things, and then this had the strike, COVID, and probably studio interference because let's face it, that's just what they do.
Right.
So, and then for me, like I didn't really laugh at anything. I was sitting there dying the whole time. I did appreciate some stuff like in the opening map where we actually saw like real Starfleet logos.
That is something I love the map stuff because it canonized map stuff that appears in non-canon map books that I love, that I have all over my house.
I have the map on my wall.
Yeah.
That is that map. I was a little annoyed that they still had like, here's where the Cardassian Union is, but we don't know what it is, but we know the name of the planets. Like you're in the 21st
Right.
century. You're in the early 24th century. You don't know where the Cardassians are yet.
Right. Exactly.
But that's in the weeds. But there just wasn't enough character development, and it didn't really know what it wanted to do. It was trying so hard to be Guardians of the Galaxy in space in Star Trek that it completely forgot what even their version of Section 31 is supposed to be. And so like for them, special Section 31 is like the CIA. In like Deep Space Nine, it's a little bit worse and darker and in the background than the CIA.
Yeah.
But they didn't even do that. It just felt like clowns on parade. And like,
it was that was their clown car.
I had a really hard time believing that these people were competent agents who could do anything, because they were just all acting like children.
It was just kind of like Animal. It was like Animal House.
Yeah.
It was.
And
it was Mean Girls. It was Mean Girls.
Yeah,
they're like, oh, we're all this and that, but Starfleet sucks.
And then just one like visual design that just grossed me out for no reason. The Kamaloids have a lovely shape-shifting ability that has been shown multiple times. This was like Venom nastiness that didn't need to go there.
He turns himself into a spider web so he can catch.
It's like you are the things that you are capable of shapeshifting into are anthropomorphic because you have that many limbs. Like you can change your size, you can change your mass, but that's what you're limited to because you are that type of creature. It's like not every shapeshifter in Star Trek is a founder.
Oh, no. Yeah,
they're not all the changelings. Like they're not.
Because
can do all these things. So it was just one of those like.
Iman in Star Trek 6, all she did was change into other bipedal humanoids.
That's my point. Yeah,
exactly. And so for Sam Richardson, Detroit respect, to just turn into like a spider web is just that kind of took me out as well. Yeah. All right, Peter, and we're gonna have to move on pretty quickly. But let's have your rating, and then I'll give mine, and then we're gonna give. We'll talk some feedback from our crew, our listeners. So, what's your rating?
1.
I expected that.
Yeah.
So
that I would give it a 0, but people tried, so I'll give it a 1.
Yeah.
What I feel like with my rating, I feel like Peter's going to be like DM you like, let's never ask this guy back to the show.
No, you're good. I'm fine with differing opinions.
Yeah.
We all know I am like the old school canon dude. You are 2017 wiki on my computer.
Yeah, LeRon,
I'm that guy.
You are part of the stable. You're part of the show now, so you're not getting away. All right, so here I go. This is not only the worst Star Trek film, leaving Final Frontier, Nemesis, and all the JJ movies off the hook for all time, but this is likely the very worst Star Trek that has ever been produced. Of almost 1,000 entries. Okay, yes, please.
Stop, because like I feel like the worst movie. I feel like Into Darkness and The Final Frontier are always fighting for last place.
Not anymore. Not to me. To me. To me. I've just never seen a Star Trek that got Star Trek wrong in every way. I mean, they tipped all the boxes upside down. It was like Mirror Universe getting it right. They couldn't even, Peter said it, find a way to deepen the background of not only the character in the current continuity, but the single heritage character that they dialed them back 20 years into their youth. They couldn't even find a way to deepen the background of a character that we didn't even really know that much about, because she just didn't really seem anything like. What's the name of the actress who played? It was Trisha something, who played Garrett in Yesterday's Enterprise. She also came back and played a Klingon later in TNG. Trisha, I don't know, but anyway, Trisha, didn't it all seem like she just plugged in as a name? And as a stranger, and it's just that really rubbed me the wrong way. All the original characters, they're bland, they're forgettable, or both, and the introducing them and then just killing them off is just a super nothing burger for me. This is a flip of Michelle's great film, Everything, blah, 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 all at once, because this is nothing all at once to me. And I'm quoting an article that I read.
Trisha O'Neill, by the way.
Trisha O'Neill, thank you. You know how the WB 86, that Batwoman movie, for tax purposes? I wish Paramount would have had the balls to do that with this. I got to be honest with you.
Fair.
And my wife had a comment. She said something that I think a lot of us is thinking: would this have survived or flourished if it was a series? So 2 seasons of 20 episodes, LeRon, as you were saying, would it have been better? Better. Would it have still been terrible? Also, yes. And I quoted Peter to this, and it's my early dub of the name of this episode. This is Star Trek's Rebel Moon. This is Zack Snyder does Star Trek. That's me. Okay, so let's read a couple of comments, and then we're going to move on to talking about Deep Space Nine, which is you can't ping it. Larry Giver, who's a friend of ours from Indiana, from the Secret Friends Unite Facebook page. I was excited when I heard about what it was about, and then the first trailer killed every ounce of enthusiasm. Oh boy, Larry!
I feel that one.
Craig Mack is an associate of mine on Threads, CRM 2020. It really feels like they took all their ideas for Section 31 series and truncated them down to 90 minutes. You can see hints of possible storylines the show might have had, especially with Zeph, I keep calling him Zepp, but it's Zeph with an H, and Melly, who is a Deltan. But then why they even bothered to mention them is beyond me. It felt like the Suicide Squad, the David Ayer one, in terms of losing characters and lack of cohesion. I enjoyed it as a long episode, but don't really need a sequel or a follow-up. And based on those ratings, I don't think you're going to have anything to worry about. Aubrey, who's a friend of Peter and me, she's within the Star Trek fan club with us here locally, was on our Secret Friends Unite Discord. I think there was definitely some good stuff. It just felt they tried to fit a lot into a small amount of time. It was an hour and 35 minutes, which was standard back when they made their last movies. Now it's closer to 3. That's true. There's still short movies out there, but for a big sci-fi epic, think about Endgame or think about the Batman. Yeah, exactly. In a way, it was one of those extended episodes in a regular season. So a 2-parter, kind of like LeRon was saying. So, all right. Well, we closed the door on Section 31. And again, with those low ratings and just a general vitriol that's making the way around, 2 sides of it. A, that doesn't bode well for it to moving forward. But I think, LeRon, to your point, you hit it on the head, that it is putting Star Trek out there for people who have not tuned into it before.
That's getting people to watch it. That's great. It's just for me, watch this, then watch something like Deep Space Nine and see what we're really about.
Please do. All right. Well, speaking of Deep Space Nine, as we'd love to frequently do so, we are ending season 6. We're into the last batch of episodes. I remember this very fondly. I remember the very last episode of this. I actually taped off of the TV station I was interning at. I was interning at a Fox station in Lansing, Michigan, because I attended Michigan State University. I worked at Fox 47 for that summer. And out of the control room, I got a taped copy of this episode. So I got to watch it, I think, sooner than it would have aired on the station. So I was pretty excited about that. So that was my copy of it. So, but yeah, a lot happened in this batch of episodes. So, LeRon, as our host, would you like to read the summary as appears here and then kind of tip us up talking about episode 20?
Okay, let's see. Wait, where am I?
line, and then we.
Yeah, are you back in the flow? It's okay. You listen to me do it, and I'll toss you in on the next one.
Okay.
Episode 20 is His Way, directed by Alan Craker. Ira and Hans Beimler are doing the writing from April of 1998. Bashir shows off a new Holosuite program of a martini lounge in 1960s Las Vegas with a singer named Vic Fontaine, who's very perceptive. He's like Guinan, but a hologram and a white guy from the 60s, and gives advice to Odo when Kira visits her ex-lover, Shakar.
What if Frank Sinatra was a therapist?
Oh my gosh, yes, exactly. Or the chick from Jumpin' Jack Flash was a bartender. Oh yes, the Wait, they already did that. All right, God, I remember seeing this springtime, and it was one of those that when I saw, because back then, we didn't know what was coming up until you saw that preview, clip the week before. You didn't have online summary. You didn't really have the internet to kind of point you in quite that direction. But so this was a total surprise when it rolled out. And Vic Fontaine is played by the late James Darren. He just passed away recently. But he was one of the original kind of what was that series, like the Gidget and the beach movies of the 1960s. He was big in that racket. Yeah. And he was on T.J. Hooker with Shatner in the early 1980s. This is one of the best things to kind of lighten things up that DS9 did at all in the entirety of its run, was creating this character. Absolutely fantastic. We knew that, I know that if we would have done the Will They, Won't They with Odo and Kira through the end of the series, or if they never got together, it would have been awful, and we dipped really hard into it at the end of last season when we had that Children of Time, where the Defiant knocked itself backwards in time 200 years, and then our people found a grouping I saw your notes, sorry, but you threw me off. But yes, that one's absolutely yours. And so, we found out that at least now she knows, but then we had the arc on the station with, the founder and them finally getting to start to talk about their feelings and stuff. So this was just the culmination of that. I think that, it was a slow burn for them getting together, but they finally pulled it off. I absolutely loved it. This was absolutely great episode. LeRon, your thoughts?
Well, I always loved the Odo Kira connection because you could tell there was always something deep going on there. If anything, they had the deepest respect for each other and friendship and stuff like that. And like we saw in previous episodes, like when she was undercover in the Resistance doing stuff to sabotage things on DS9. Odo had her hauled in a couple of times into the security office to question her, investigate her, and all that stuff. And the fact that she was able to outmaneuver him back then, I'm pretty sure that's where he gained that respect for her and everything at. So yeah, like it was great, like watching this episode. And the introduction of Vic Fontaine, I'm gonna say this, like that was one of the only holodeck escapades on DS9 that I was not really warm with until Bada Bing Bada Bang happened.
Such a great send off.
I love a good heist. I love a good heist episode, and that's something Star Trek has always seemed to do well. No matter what series we are, like they do heist episodes really well. But so back then, when His Way actually premiered, like I was not really warm to that. I was like, man, I'm still on this Arman Bashir kick. Like, can we go back to that? But given that was a plot device to, because everybody could see Odo was just pining for Kira and stuff like that, and even when what was it, Children of Time happened, and older Odo confessed that it always hurt him, that she was a confidant for her relationships, and he always wanted to be one of her relationships, but he always never knew how to approach it. He never knew how to say anything about it, but the one thing he always wanted to do was be her friend and support her and stuff like that. So yeah, I was actually glad when this, because I was this the episode where they they were going to ops, and then the elevator comes up and they're lip locked. No, that was Julian. That was Julian Avery. That was Julian Avery.
Yeah. Very end of the series.
No, he just planted one on her in the middle of the promenade. That's right.
Yeah. They had the big scene, and everybody is like, oh. It was a whole moment. So yeah. Awesome. It's been a while since I've seen His Way. His Way is not one of those episodes I always keep rewatching.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, it was a delight to come back to it. Peter.
What can I say about this episode? It's fun.
And it's good because we need fun in such a heavy season,
especially with some stuff that comes up. So this is just a really fun little episode. It's good to have a new voice to help Odo, because he clearly isn't listening to anybody else, which is hilarious because we see, like, I think it's even in this episode where, like, Quark tries to give him advice and he sort of listens to it, but then he's like, meh,
I don't think so.
In the Odo way, which was more like, so
Harumph.
Yeah. His classic harumph.
Yeah.
So, but it's really cool. Like, one thing that, as a pianist, it just made me giggle was like, I don't know how to play the piano. And it's like, just fake it. It'll be great. And then like the piano starts playing itself, and then you just have him like kind of wiggling his hands above the keyboard and then bopping around. I'm like, that's how the piano's always played in movies anyway. So, you can't do any worse, Odo.
Right. Oh my God.
So I thought that was hysterical. Odo, where Fontaine's trying to get like, here, you need to practice. Here's a holographic girl that you can try to flirt with. Like, there's so many just really goofy moments. And then, you're a hologram. Of course I know I'm a hologram. What's a hologram? Like, there's just so many, there's just so many goofy, like, there's totally like, there's some like underlying meta wink, wink, nudge, nudge about Moriarty here that I just find absolutely hysterical.
Right.
Especially like, Odo's sitting in his office. Vic to Odo, I have something for you. Vic, how are you talking to me in my office? Well, like,
yeah, right. Well,
like, there's just all of these just really, really funny things. Like, to me, it made Vic a very enjoyable character from the get-go. Like, when I did see this the first time, I will grant that, like LeRon, I was a little like, what is this?
Right.
But I grew, just like you, I grew to like Vic, and so now when I watch it again, it's just like, hey, this is funny. So it's just hilarious.
It ages well.
It ages very well.
Yeah.
Honestly, Vic became. I don't want to say he was a fan favorite character, but I will say he wound up becoming a favorite because, like, he helped quite a few of the main cast out with like their
Nog,
issues,
especially.
He was definitely a catalyst for some character development.
Yeah, there was some character development that just needed a little bit of a kick in the pants, and he was the one that was able to do it because he was fresh blood.
He helped half the cast get their shit together.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, LeRon, you had a special request for this next one, so take it away.
All right, so the 21st episode of season 6 was The Reckoning, which was directed by Jesus Salvador Trevino. The story was by Harry M. Worksman and Gabrielle Stanton, with teleplay by David Weddle and Bradley Thompson. This episode premiered April 25th in 1998, and basically what's going on in this story is Cisco is called down to Bajor when an ancient tablet addressing the emissary is discovered at Valhalla. Okay, so what we know about The Reckoning is that basically this talks about the new golden age for the Bajorans, as far as like their communion with the prophets and stuff like that.
Right.
And it was, honestly, this is like part 2 of the one episode from season 5, which is escaping me right now.
It was the first episode with the uniform Peter's wearing.
Yes.
Yes.
The episode where Cisco goes full psycho. Yeah,
exactly. Totally flips out.
Yeah, but the crazy part about that is that tablet revealed a whole bunch of stuff, like the Locust, like Bajor. Like, look at the Jem'Hadar ships.
Right.
But anyway, okay, so Cisco basically is trying to like figure out the tablet, and he's understanding that the prophets have something major coming for Bajor that could definitely change things. But also, there's part of a Starfleet side, and it's like, this could also be a little problematic. But I'm the emissary. I'm a follow it through because I have to. Of course, there's a kerfluffle with Kai Wynn, which is always amazing. It's always funny and stuff like that.
A bunch of misunderstanding. It's funny, we're watching Shameless right now, and she was the grandmother on that show, and we just watched.
I haven't started Shameless. It's on my list. I did not know Louise Fletcher was on that. Okay, now I got
It's so great. Yes, I absolutely recommend it. So,
Yeah.
well, cool. Big time. All right, Peter.
This is a very interesting episode. Obviously, it follows up on the episode from where they find Bahala in the first place.
Rapture. The name Rapture is
Thank
the
you. Thank you. Rapture. Thank you.
I was
about to look
I'm
it up right
racking
now.
my brain, it just wasn't working. But yeah, this is an interesting one, especially because it's kind of like a version of the Bajoran apocalypse, which then we have a, in my opinion, a not amazing follow-up much later at the end of season 7. But we have like the Bajoran apocalypse where we have the face-off between the prophets and the Pa Wraiths. I think this is one of the earlier moments where we see a Pa Wraith actually do something.
Right.
Like physically. We see them way more in season 7.
Right.
This is like the first time where a Pa Wraith actually like manifests and does shit.
Right.
So, and annoyingly takes Jake, which then throws Cisco into a tizzy.
Right.
Which, makes sense. If the devil is possessing your son, you're kind of going to lose your shit.
It's all exorcism thing happening. Yeah.
And the only reason why Jake even got possessed by a Pa Wraith is because he questioned Cisco's role in this whole ordeal.
And the Pa Wraiths were like, really?
He's the one.
He basically just left the door just open enough, and the Pa Wraith was like, well, I can screw with the emissary. This seems like a perfect real estate right here.
He was the Ned Flanders devil right there.
Yeah, pretty much. So I did find it kind of funny where like Cisco is really like distraught, and then he like the whole tablet is like the emissary brings upon the reckoning. He's like, what does that mean? He gets mad, and then he knocks over the tablet and breaks it, and then the reckoning starts. Like
the reckoning starts.
He's like, yes, emissary, you caused it. This is one of those like Oracle of Delphi instances where they tell you something super vague, and then you try to avoid it, and it happens because you were trying to avoid it.
I loved,
which I thought that was great.
Kai Wynn was like, how could you be so petty? Like,
really?
One of the only times, like, she was in the right to discipline him.
Every once in a while, Kai Wynn has a win. And
Kai Wynn has a win.
But this is one of them, but they're few and far between.
So stretched out. Big time stretched out.
So, but basically, I like the conflict that we have between the Power Race and the prophets, basically embodied by Kira and Jake. The fight itself is very Harry Potter-esque of let me point my energy at you harder. But it works because how do you show trans-dimensional beings fighting?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. They're not going to do kung fu fighting like they did.
So it works. But I do find it interesting how the apocalypse is stopped. One by a father's love for his son, because
the power of friendship,
and then also because Kai Wynn is just like, I don't want to deal with this right now.
Yeah, this isn't all about me. So let me find a way to make it not happen, so we can come back around to me.
Yeah. So it's like you have Cisco being noble, and then you have Kai Wynn just being like, how about no?
Yeah. How about no? You crazy interdimensional bastard. I would say I think it was just exciting that they gave Jake something to do, because it's tough with child characters. I mean, when he came on the show, the character was 13 or 14. It's now 6 years later, so he's quote unquote out of high school, as it were. So he's a legal adult by at least our parlance. And I've met Shrek Lofton a bunch of times. He does a lot of fan events. He was on the cruise one year. Super nice guy, and he's a podcaster as well. But it was just great to see him get something to do some acting, kind of have the character of Jake be relevant, which it comes out even more so in the next episode, which is my absolute favorite. So I enjoyed it. And again, this episode does kind of what DS9 does best, which is take their 10,000 foot bird's eye view of the entire series and plugs in an instance of it, much like the last episode plugged in, getting Odo and Kira finally together and getting that to be kind of where it needs to be. So, all right. Well, I'm going to steal the next one because I love it so much. So, Peter, I'm going to dump the one after that.
That's what I figured.
Episode 22 is Valiant. Mike Vihar doing the directing. the beautiful Ron Moore writing this one on his own. God, I love that man, and I really hope to meet him someday. Not that that's creepy, Ron, if you happen to catch our show. It's very
Not in a creepy
sincere,
way.
very sincere imaginations from May of '98. Jake and Nog come under attack by the Jem'Hadar and are rescued by a rogue Defiant-class starship, the Valiant, under the command of Starfleet Red Squadron cadets. This really clicked with me because I was in college when I saw this. I was in my junior year or my first senior. I had 2 senior years because I had a medical 1 year. So at the end of my first senior year, so I was the same age as the kids who were flying this ship, and I would thought, oh, this would be what it's like if you have a bunch of Harvard prep snob kids fighting the Jem'Hadar. Because let's face it, they're pretty far up their own butts. They really believe their own superiority. And this captain was it Captain Waters? He's charismatic,
Yeah.
but he's a douchebag. And the absolute best part of the episode is when because it comes around that they discover this Dominion ship. They think they figured out how to blow it. It's the ship it's bigger than the Enterprise D, and better armed. So it's like it's like a Star Destroyer from Star Wars. It's the ship. They're like, we figured out the way to blow it up, and we'll do this and we'll do that. And even though it was our mission to leave because they had been behind enemy lines since the war started, the proper captain of the ship had died, and the other officers on the ship, and they took it over. But the original mission was, our original mission is to find this battleship, which seems weird that they would have had those orders before the war started, but whatever. Let's not dig too deep. And so instead of these kids saying, "Hey, we found we painted the ship. Now somebody can go back and find it. Let's go home." They're like, "You know what? We're gonna Jim Kirk this shit. We're gonna go in. We're gonna be heroes." And I love talking about giving Jake something great to do. I love how Jake stands up and says, "Most of you probably know that my dad is Ben Sisko." And after the first officer, Karen, I think the character's name was Karen, which was so perfect because gosh, bitch. Oh my God. She tried to shut him down time. She's like, "You're not a member of this crew." And the captain's like, "Let him talk." And he's like, "Well, Ben Sisko's my dad. You know that he's one of the best combat officers in the fleet. And I'm telling you right now, even with his whole crew of the Defiant behind him, he would never do something like this. And if he can't do it, it can't be done." Yeah. And Waters goes, "We're Red Squad and we can do anything." And they start doing a chant.
That part. Oh my God.
Red Squad. I'm like, it's red because it's going to be red. The ship is going to be red with with your blood all over these walls. You stupid fucking idiots. Pardon my French.
Yeah.
God, these kids were dumb, and they all die. They all die with the exception of Dorian, who's a young woman that we first meet, and because even the ones who lived in the escape pods, all the escape pods get shot. So every single one of those kids died. Like there's that 30 seconds on the bridge where everything's exploding. That the kid at the con, who we'd met before, he was in the 2-parter back in season 4, the Paradise Lost 2-parter on Earth. He was a cadet we met back then, so he was actually a returning character. He dies. The dumbass captain dies. Super Karen dies. And then Dorian, who's the young lady, still wants to stick around. And Nog's like, "Yeah, I had drunk the Kool-Aid, but now I'm spitting the Kool-Aid out. We got to get out of here." And they go, and Jake is locked up by that point. So they get him, and then they escape. So, and then they have the scene at the end, because the Defiant does then find them, and Bashir is treating her. And she is still Kool-Aid drunk. Like, he was the best captain in the whole wide world. And Nog says...
Nog has a great line.
Yeah, Nog's like, he might have been brave, and he might have been this, but he was a bad captain because he got everybody killed. And holy crap, do I love this episode. Definitely one that I go back to all the time. LeRon.
Okay, so Valiant is one of my guilty pleasure episodes because this definitely explains what it's like being an outsider to a situation, because Nog hero worshipped Red Squad back when he was at the academy. He hero worshipped them and stuff like that, But I also feel like Nog finally got to get some recognition because in the two-part episode where Sisko and Odo were on Earth dealing with a changeling infiltration and stuff like that. Also really good fucking episodes, by the way. But
great 2-parter.
Yeah, but yeah, because I remember Nog had a conversation with Captain Sisko about Red Squad. It was like they're just not taking me seriously, and it's like, well, yeah, you're gonna run this stuff like that from time to time at the academy. the thing about and technically Red Squad is not the same organization that Wesley was in when he had his major fuck up at the academy.
Yeah,
But it
close.
feels
It
like
was
it.
close enough. This guy was as dumb as
Delta
Nick
Squad.
Lucarno.
Yeah. Yeah. So getting a chance to see that is like I'm a veteran of the United States Navy and stuff like that. And what I know is watching the officers that went to academy versus the officers that went into ROTC and then became officers in the military.
Yeah.
Red Squad sounded like the typical academy officers, hey, we're the cream of the crop because like we're here and all this stuff. And yeah, so I love that episode because it showed what it looks like from the outside looking in, in universe. In that point,
Yeah.
Not finally got his wish, like to be one of them and stuff like that. They even they even promoted him past what he got from his battlefield commission, and stuff like that.
Right, exactly, yeah. Which, of course, they still managed to get his pips wrong. He's supposed to be lieutenant commander, and all he got was one hollow pip. So he was which he becomes a lieutenant JG at the end of the series. But yeah, and it's funny because they did the exact same thing to Data in the flashback sequences of All Good Things. They took it back to the beginning of the show. He was still wearing the wrong pips, and it was the same configuration. Yeah, super annoying. So
ultimately though, like the one thing that I always keep going back to about Valiant though is the fact that who the hell was in charge of that Starfleet vessel before they died and stuff? Because like not even Section 31 would have done these academy students like this,
right?
There would have been no way in hell, like like I can understand they're prototyping a ship, because we did this in the military ourselves, like we had like 2 weeks, where we were on like the real ship and stuff like that. But at the same time, like there was never a whole thing of like, oh yeah, you're just gonna keep taking these orders, because and this is Starfleet, like somebody would have had the damn common sense say, we got to turn this ship around. Like, we're not even finding we have a cloaking device, but we're behind enemy lines. We need to get the hell up out of here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Instead of letting a bunch of fucking teenagers run around in a warship. All right, Peter, your thoughts?
I don't have that much to add, actually. Most of it's been said. I do think that there is some good Nog moments in here where he gradually realizes that these guys are dumb.
Yeah.
So
that's dumb is being nice.
Dumb is being exceptionally charitable.
They were jackasses. And
Nog's line at the end is great, where it's like he may have been a hero, he may have been a good man, he may have even all of that, but in the end, he was a bad captain, and he really was, because he didn't really take care of his crew. It's like, we got to do this, and that's it. Yeah. If I remember correctly, the whole thing was they were supposed to do like a around the quadrant sort of just cruise to shake out the kinks on the ship, and then the war started and they were stuck behind enemy lines. I always got the impression that Waters was full of shit about their mission.
Right.
He just we're doing this. Starfleet knows. Absolutely not, you dumbass.
Yes.
They would not leave cadets behind the lines.
Yeah, they weren't that hard up, even though there's word going on.
No, it's like we're Red Squad. We're super. Yeah. It's like, no, they would have sent the Defiant with the cloaking device to come get you if you were stuck behind enemy lines and they knew you were still alive.
It's like they were the Millennium Falcon, and it would be, what is it that line up? The Death Star blown up by a bunch of effing teenagers.
So it's just there are just so many red flags with these Red Squad guys.
Red flag, red squad, red flag. Oh,
so it's a great episode. It's very well written, but man, these guys suck.
Red Squad, Red Flag is now the name of the episode. So, all right, well, let's move into talking about, there you go, Peter. Why don't you just take us into some Ferengi shenanigans? One of the absolute worst.
Episode 23. Well, I'm sure we all have thoughts. Prophet and Lace. Directed by Siddig Al-Fadil. I don't know how he drew this one, but there you go. Written by Ira Stephen Bear and Hans Beimler.
How?
Winner again, I guess.
How could they do that?
Aired on May 9th of 98. Quark helps out when Zek's status as the Ferengi Grand Nagus is put in jeopardy by proposing equal rights for Ferengi females, and then has to pose as a Ferengi female for negotiations.
To say that it's a problematic episode, particularly in the world that we live in these days, let's not even go there. Let's just talk about the fact that, and I know Armin personally because I've met him on several occasions at shows and stuff, and he is a classically trained actor and a very nice guy. What were they thinking about? Right,
I have some thoughts on what they were thinking.
Please.
So we've had this whole like subplot with the Ferengi of like undoing their exceptional misogyny that's been kind of running through most of the Moogie episodes, because that's when they finally like. I mean, there were always jokes before that of like females don't wear clothing and all. Like there were some talks about that. There was one episode with Pell in season 2.
Yes.
With the Karma. So we saw like a little bit of it, and then we were dealing with it more. So I think what they were trying to do was to have Quark literally walk a mile in her shoes to try to learn how difficult it was and all of that. I think that's what they were trying to do. It didn't really land like much at all. There were lots of like, because there's a lot of, I mean, to be fair, because that's just how writing works, there are a lot of tropes, there are a lot of stereotypes, which is understandable, but they overdid some of them. And also, it almost feels like they got the fat suit from Mrs. Doubtfire for Armin Shimmerman, because like when I was looking at him, it's like there's no way, like it can't. Like,
because Armin is not. He's not an overweight
I was
guy.
like in my brain, I'm putting him in his suit next to that, and it's like, even with like the extra bust padding and stuff, this just doesn't match.
I know. Like, he looks like a Ukrainian.
Well, I mean, they called his character Lumba for a reason, and it was just like
oh my god,
my goodness, guys. Like there's definitely like an attempt, like there's an attempt to have like Quark experience the misogyny and the over sexualization and all of that. So like there's attempts here. It's just really bad. So there's good thoughts behind this episode. You can see what they're trying to do, but it's just like, it didn't hit it. It didn't land.
You didn't nail it. Oh my god. All right, LeRon, what do you think, my man?
This is one of the ones I usually skip. Okay, so here's the thing about me, because I'm an IT guy for the most part. I work from home and stuff like that. I'm sorry, not Paramount, Pluto TV. I usually have that on one of my other monitors, and and Star Trek is always my background noise and stuff like that.
Nice, cool.
Usually, so it's almost always on the DS9 channel until the TNG channel is playing TOS Star Trek, because I'm probably about to get run off the show, but TNG is my least favorite Star Trek.
That's okay. That's okay. And you know what? And equally, I know you love Discovery. Peter and I, we don't like it very much at all, as I'm sure you got a vibe. So that's equal balance. People should lock onto the Trek they love, and they don't have to apologize.
If you don't like a certain show, that's fine.
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
but I mean, you're never going to get a ton of Discovery love on this show between Peter and me. But it is what it is. But anyway, please.
Yeah, but this episode, whenever it comes on, it is cringe for me. Like, I did watch in its entirety recently, like a couple of months ago. It is cringe to me, but I understand what they wwere trying to go for. The message was there. The delivery was wrong.
Yes.
Layers of wrong.
Yeah. Because in all honesty, like what DS9 did for the Ferengi, overall is just amazing. Well, actually, what DS9 did for the Ferengi, for the Klingons, the Cardassians, and the Romulans were amazing, because the Romulans in TNG were just mustache twirlers,
There was a little bit more depth when we got to like unification and stuff.
Yeah, unification. Yeah, I think that was the first time when someone said, "Hey, we need to flesh these guys out."
The Bajorans were nothing in TNG. They had a single appearance. The Trill had a single appearance. They flipped that race around, changed them around, fleshed it out with Dax and all that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So every episode dealt with just like Ferengi, with the Ferengi, like with the way the society of the Ferengi just were just changing and evolving. Those are always going to be some great episodes. As a matter of fact, if you remember how back they used to have those Stardate collections on DVD and stuff, they should have done one for the Ferengi. You know,
Right.
the show from the Arsenal of Freedom, was that the episode?
No, it wasn't Arsenal
No.
Freedom. It was
I know the Takan
Oh,
Empire. It was with-
Arsenal of Freedom was the one where like
Echo
the drones.
Papa was the
yeah, Echo
Yeah.
Pop. Yeah. But no, and Armin was, of course, not the
One
same
of the
character,
first
but he was the
Ferengi.
first Ferengi. Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
He had the whip. He was the one with the
Yes.
whip.
Rod or
I have
no.
I have the figure behind me in my little figure collection. I don't
Yeah.
think you can make him out, but I think he's closer to the ground.
Oh, didn't they have a Funko Pop with one of the Ferengi with the whip though? I think they did.
I'm not.
They
He
probably
is.
did.
He's directly behind me, but he's in the back row. Do you see the figures?
Yeah.
Right
Yeah.
below the Enterprise. He's there. He's there.
Okay. Yeah. So like I enjoyed it, and even even the Lower Decks episode that dealt with the Ferengi, like it's been great that we've been able to see like an evolution of the Ferengi society, throughout these episodes. So I understand what this episode was going for. It is just like the worst one, and also man, like. Star Trek is supposed to imitate life. So whose societies out there women are always supposed to be unclothed? Wow.
Yeah. I don't know of one, but that's probably okay. All right. Well, let's move along. Episode 24. Unfortunately, we get into another miss on this one. It's not a favorite of mine. Time's Orphan. Alan Craker doing the directing. And again, we have a pedigree of writers. Joe Menosky is doing the story. Weddell and Thompson do the teleplay. So you have all rock solid guys. From May of 98, Molly O'Brien disappears into a vortex and reappears as an 18-year-old woman. 18-year-old woman, but she is now feral, bringing great difficulty to her parents.
Well, apparently feral is a virtue now, so she would get along just fine.
I guess so. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Feral is a whole new subculture. I don't know. But yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Hannah Hattay played Molly the entire time she was on the show. Like it was the baby they used as baby Molly to very young Molly, and then moved over here. And I feel like it was always her, but I could be wrong. I'd have to dig into that. But Hannah Hattay, who is now, of course, a grown woman, played Molly for the majority of her appearances, with the exception of obviously jumping forward and being 18 years old. But this is, it's tough to do this kind of family story in Star Trek because the with the exception of this was one of the few married couples. There was one of the few that had children because you had Cisco and Jake, but he was a widower. And then you had the O'Briens, and a lot of people really put Keiko down. They think she really browbeats the chief a lot, and of course the chief is a very tortured character regardless. I just don't know where I land with O'Brien family episodes. I just didn't feel like it was great. And it was not that, I couldn't care about these characters who were some of our longest running, they're some of our longest running characters, and they were a transplant from TNG, which I love because I grew up on it. But I had a hard time being really emotionally invested in the stakes of this episode. So yeah, definitely not one of my favorites. LeRon, what do you think?
Yeah, also pretty low on the scale for me as well. Like there was a part like I enjoyed it more than Profit and Lace, but also like I feel like this could have been really been like a sub story, inside another episode, But
like
also the ramifications of the fact that we're gonna lose our little girl, which I'm gonna be a little honest with you, like. Star Trek as a whole, it's always bothered me when family and children are involved, and this is probably because like I'm spouses and children. I mean, it's probably because like I'm a veteran of the military and stuff like that. We might take our families with us on other duty stations, but we don't take them into
The ship. Yeah. Combat zone. Yeah.
We don't do that. And I'm glad Star Trek definitely got away from that. By the time Voyager was over, like Voyager's a special case. But
it's a small ship, and
even
Enterprise D was like, look at all these kids running around. This is a horrible idea.
Yeah,
but no, we're going to fight Klingons now. Yeah,
right. Even Janeway and Chakotay were like, this would our starship would never be a place for family and children. They said that explicitly.
They know it.
Episodes and stuff like that, and Janeway is like one of those people, like she couldn't see past her own uniform the first 2 seasons,
right, exactly.
Yeah.
So
but one thing I did like though is it talked about the pain trauma that happens when families are separated from their children for even though technically like you went through the vortex and came back out 10 minutes later as a grown woman. But she was not the same
Still
girl.
like 12 years past.
Puberty's a bitch. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, like it holds a special place to me because like it does bring back the whole thing about family. And I understand Star Trek of that era was definitely talking about family and not so much found family like Star Trek has talked about, in every iteration and stuff like that. But yeah, it was a weak episode for me too.
Yeah, for sure. Peter.
I would tend to agree that this is a weak episode. There are some really good moments between the O'Briens in the cargo bay when they're trying to reconnect with Feral Molly.
Feral Molly.
But like I like those things, but it just doesn't hold the A plot spot in terms of like enough. There's just not enough going on there.
Yeah.
And then the B plot is funny, right? It's Worf watching Hiroshi. And that's funny, especially like he had this thing. He said, "Gunga gung. What's that?" That is between me and Hiroshi. Refuses to clarify.
Right,
like,
exactly.
Yeah. That was like, there's some really, really funny stuff with Worf being obstinate about taking care of this 2-year-old.
Right. And it's just a minor, like the B plot. It's like a B- plot. It's so small.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Yeah, I would have to say that's probably the best part of the episode.
And I mean, we see why he's doing it. It's like I proved that I was able to be your mate. Now I want to prove that I can be a father to your children. Like, you can see why he's doing it. And it's like, there's a bit of honorable Worfishness in there, which is just, classic and hilarious.
Yeah.
But also just, Worf trying to take care of a 2-year-old will never not be funny.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Big time. All right. We're getting near to the end here. So Peter, this next one's yours.
All right. Episode 25. I'm sorry. Episode 25. The Sound of Her Voice, directed by Winter Colby, story by Pam Petroforte, teleplay by Ron Moore, aired June 6th of 98. The Defiant picks up a distress call from Captain Lisa Cusack, whose escape pod has crashed on a remote planet following destruction of her ship, the Olympia. Complications ensue, namely temporal ones.
Yes. Oh man, spoiler. Holy cow.
This is a tough episode. It's very a good one. So. It's a very good.
And I'll tell you, the voice of Lisa Cusack, who we don't see, is voiced by actress and comedian Deborah Wilson, who, if you enjoyed Mad TV in the 1990s, which was a Fox sketch TV show that tried to duplicate the success of Saturday Night Live, she was terrific. Yeah. And I'm sure she's been in other stuff, but she's she's known for kind of her wacky antics as being as a comedian, but she has a beautiful, distinct speaking voice, and she's done a lot of voice work. Was she, now you're a video game guy, LeRon, wasn't she the voice in the Jedi Survivor game of the other Jedi? Yeah, there you go. There you go. She's really great. And what a great exploration of all of the underlying difficulties that our characters are having because, the war's been going on for almost a year now. Relationships are strained, and she's her own version of a ship's counselor, just talking to these guys because they spend like a week trying to get to her, going at high warp speed because she's at this planet very, very far away. And they finally, and they finally reach her. And what happens, Peter, when they finally get to her?
When they finally get there, they discover a desiccated corpse and realize that she's been dead for 8 years. 3
years.
3 years. Okay. Yeah. She's been dead for quite some time. Yeah. And the alarming thing for them is they had been talking to her, 15 minutes before this, right? Where she went into hypoxia and collapsed.
But it was a temporal. It was a very Star Trek-y explanation. We also get a beautiful new visual of how one of the shuttles launches from.
That was a very cool thing.
It's a drop ship, so it just because the Defiant, you got to understand, is only 4 decks wide. It's very small. Crew of 47. The shuttle launch part is probably on deck 2, but it drops down this little central thing and flies off. So doing that with practical models, the way they did, or at least I'm not even necessarily sure it was practical. It might have been early CGI. That was super compelling, I thought, to see that addition. Plus, they have a cool little micro shuttle, which I really dig.
Yeah, the micro shuttle's pretty cool.
Yeah. Potential costuming error. The Olympia would have crashed in 2371, but they would have launched from Starfleet proper in 2362 when they still wore the spandex season 1 TNG outfits. That's potentially what she should have been wearing. But
the one that gave them back problems.
Yeah, exactly. But that being said, and the women, even when they moved to a collared version, they still wore jumpsuits while the men got 2 pieces. Hypothetically, they always say, like, yeah, how come on Voyager they had one type of phaser in season 1, and then season 2 they switched to the curve handle one? And the explanation was, well, the computer was like pre-programmed to do it at a certain date to change their phaser. So I'm like, yeah, okay. So, but the thing is, with uniforms, to clean them, you just put them back in the replicator. So maybe their computer said, well, we just changed uniforms. Your uniform has a collar now. And so on a Tuesday morning, when she gets up and pushes the button, it replicates a uniform that has a collar. I fixed it.
The main computer's like, according to Subspace, uniform changeover happened yesterday.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Yeah. So here you go. So
can you imagine just going to your closet like, what happened to my uniforms?
Yeah. Yeah.
But then again, I'd be like, oh hell, fuck yeah! When we got the season 5 and 6 DS9 uniforms, this is the one.
they didn't do it on Voyager though, because Voyager they'd have to replicate for 100.
I mean, Subspace. Yeah. I always wonder why, when like the whole Pathfinder thing happened, did no one get the doctor the memo?
They didn't get the download for the new uniform pattern. So, Peter, I might have gotten the dates wrong, but I'm totally off. But
she died in 2371, which was when
they were still
wearing the Voyager uniforms. Yeah. So her wearing the TNG collar one would have made sense.
They were still wearing them at that time. But anyway, now I'm down a rabbit hole, and we're running a bit long. LeRon, how are you feeling about this episode?
Okay, so the sound of her voice it used to be my number 1 favorite episode of the entire Star Trek franchise. It's still in my top 5, but this episode was amazing, and it wasn't even like this was like an opus for what Star Trek is or should be and stuff like that. Like, this was an episode where, like, in all honesty, like if you didn't automatically like connect and resonate with Lisa Cusack just from the ordeal she was going through while the Defiant was trying to find her, I have no words for you. I have no words for because this is an episode that basically I feel now, and especially now, like with the way narrative is, I feel like streaming has done a disservice to Star Trek, because like we don't have 26 episode arcs now to get stuff right and stuff like that. So when we have an episode here that basically is about the heart and soul of your main cast, even while we were on the Defiant, like doing all this stuff, Jake, Quark, Kira, and Odo were having their own adventure. Because Odo was going to import some extremely contraband stuff that was basically Odo was waiting for. It was like, this is finally going to push his ass away, and I would never deal with him again and stuff like that. So all this is going on. I feel like this is a hallmark episode that may not have definitely did not feel like a Star Trek show. We didn't get all the snazzy like technology. We didn't get a whole bunch of techno babble. We didn't get like ships flying everywhere and stuff like that. But at the same time, this is an episode that could have been written for any other show and would have had just as much weight and impact.
Right. Yeah. It crosses the barrier. Peter.
I would say that, this is one of those episodes that really gets to the core of what Star Trek is in terms of the delving into the human experience and the heart of the characters. Mm-hmm. And that's really where Star Trek shines. This is probably going to sound controversial, but I think that Star Trek is at its best at its core when it's dealing with the human experience and the characters, not the social messaging. When that ties in, that's where it is. But the characters and the humanity of all of the characters is really where it shines. You may crucify me later, but that's what I think.
Yes.
So but I think that this is really cool about that, where you have Captain Cusack kind of talking, like she's obviously doing it to like stay awake and like human interaction, but like she's talking the chief through different things. She's talking Bashir through different things, like talking with Cisco about his struggles with the war. Like there's so many things that are going on, and like you just get to like the struggles that these characters have, and it's like they're able to confide in this person, one, because she's just very open and just wants to listen, and then she's able to give a little bit back to them to help them grow. And so there's a lot of really beautiful stuff that's happening with the cast that's on the Defiant. Back on the station, there's just shenanigans mostly, which is great.
You got to have a little balance shenanigans.
So there's like one of my favorite moments is like, Quark, I want to see what your shady deals are. First of all, do not insult me. I'm a businessman. I do business, which is just, it was such you just saw him take absolute offense, and it was so funny.
No one involved in extra legal activities considers themselves nefarious.
Yeah. So it was really funny. And then at the end, it's like Quark gets away with it. He's like, I don't know how I got away with it. And then Odo's walking away with Kira. It's like, yeah, I let him do it. Why? I owe him one. He needed a win. Moving on.
I know. I love it. It's just a little humanity in him as well.
So even on that side, you see a little bit of growth and like the affection, not affection, but like the friendship and the actual like camaraderie that these characters have with each other, even if they're like on the wrong side of the law at times.
Right. Yeah.
So you see that friendship and everything grow. And so this episode really like shows the really, the core aspects of most of our characters and just lets them shine. And that's one of the things that really makes this episode just an exercise in excellent writing about characters.
Absolutely. And one kind of heavy-handed out that they did is when they're having the wake at the end, O'Brien's doing his big speech and he says, we've all grown apart and we didn't want it to happen and yada yada, but one day we're going to look up and somebody will be missing from this circle. And LeRon, that leads us into the next episode. Why don't you tell us about it?
Season finale of season 6 DS9, episode 26, Tears of the Prophet, directed by Alan Croker, written by Aaron Stephen Bear and Hans Beindler, premiered June 13th, 1998. Okay, Starfleet Command begins an offensive against the Dominion, and Cisco has chosen to lead the invasion of Cardassia. But the Cardassian-Dominion alliance has secretly reinforced their borders with unmanned orbital weapons platforms. Okay, so this synopsis was great in the fact that it doesn't tell us the major part of what happened in that.
The big part. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so spoiler alert for no one who's never seen this particular episode. Like, if you are a fan of Terry Farrell's Jadzia Dax, this is the episode that Dax gets killed.
Yes,
and unwittingly gets killed by Gul Dukat, who's being ridden by Paw Wraith. And this is and this is actually our next interaction with the Paw Wraiths, because like now we're because there's some serious stuff going on. But some other things that also make this episode hit really hard is that Worf and Dax wake up one morning and is like, it's time, let's try and have a baby. And,
it was the absolute buddy cop moment.
It was the follow up to the Molly O'Brien episode.
They're really teeing it up to we're gonna now let's settle down and blah blah blah. And it was he was only 2 days from retirement kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Bashir gave Dax the news that he made a breakthrough and is possibly able to like get them resequenced to where like she can actually have a union with Klingon and actually form a child. Also, what I'm missing something else in this episode. Something else that was major about this episode with crap.
At the end, Cisco says, "Well, and again, who gets to do this? I'm taking a break. I'm leaving. Well, we're in the middle of a war. We kind of need you."
That too. Like Cisco loses his connection to the Prophets for the second time technically, because there was an episode where he had an argument with like an old emissary that got thrown into the future from the
that's right.
And the Prophets are like, oh, you don't want this? We'll back off. They were absolutely quiet.
It's will they or won't they with the Prophets?
But basically, this is the episode that it honestly changed like the trajectory of DS9 for sure, but changed the trajectory for the Star Trek canon at that time, because this is the major point where when we see the next movie for the next generation, they're talking about the war. They're talking about like insurrection. They're talking about like what's going on with the Dominion and all this stuff. This changed the trajectory, and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. This was a hard episode to watch, but it is one of the best episodes of Trek to watch if you are a fan of the series, particularly DS9.
Right, yeah, it's a watershed episode. I keep bringing this up, and I hate to sound snotty, but I mean, I do know a lot of these actors just from my travels, and have spent some time with Terry Farrell on the first cruise that we went on. She taught a yoga class that April and I participated in.
Oh, nice.
But there's definitely a lot of controversy surrounding how she ended up leaving the series, and we're not going to get into that. The stories are out there. If you're super interested, feel free to give it a googs. But yeah, she was the first character who actor who had asked to be let go from the show. The first one, the third, Wesley, Will Wheaton, had a lot of disputes and ended up leaving.
Bruce Crosby
had asked to be let go before the end of the first season. But this is the first one. This is along with the one with Will Wheaton that was pretty contentious. They asked to leave because they were unhappy because of their dealings with the producers. And of course, it was the same thing with Gates McFadden getting fired and then coming back because her replacement in season 2 of TNG, Diana Muldaur, was a great actress. It just didn't click with the fans, and people love Beverly. This was really tough. That thing with, hey, we're going to try to have a baby was super heavy-handed, but whatever. I mean, that's a story trope, right? That's the kind of thing that happens. But the last 10 minutes of this, where our people are away, they come back, they find out that she's dying, and Bashir comes out and says, "There's nothing I could do for Didzia. I did save the symbiont. We're going to have to FedEx it back to Trill so somebody else can take it on." But this was tough stuff.
Yeah.
It was definitely very difficult to do that, and then to watch Sisko realize that his best friend in the whole wide world has died. He wasn't there to protect her. I don't even really know how much they knew about what happened to her, because I don't know if they have security cameras within the Bajoran temple, because Dukat showed up and then left.
No, they knew because Kira confronted Dukat when he kidnapped her to Empok Nor later in season 7.
Oh, very good. Yeah. Very good. Yeah, you got it.
It's also quite possible that Jadzia said something to Bashir or...
Yeah,
very true. That would have been awesome. We got that scene it was Dukat. It was Dukat.
Yeah. Always Dukat. But yeah, you got to see the ultimate expression of Dukat, our very multifaceted villain, and as we, the episode Waltz, which was we talked about in a recent segment, how deeply disturbed he is, and what a twisted individual. Peter, your thoughts about this episode before we wrap it up and pick our favorites and least favorites?
This episode is really tough to watch, as everyone's already said. The beginning of it is like fine, classic, like we're gonna go fight and all of this, and then Dukat's being a dumbass finding Palwraith crap, because he's like, how do we fight fire with fire? It's like, you're an idiot. But
you're an idiot.
He figures out how to close the wormhole, which it's like, I'm not entirely sure how that's helpful there, Bucko, because that stops you from bringing in reinforcements if you found a way, but all right. So there's that. There's some interesting stuff in the beginning where the Romulans and the Klingons are arguing about who takes charge of stuff. Yeah. So again, this is some of that world building stuff that DS9 is really, really good at. Right. So that was also really fun. You have, again, a return of Vic Fontaine, which is fun, which is, again, really good, except he's singing "Here's to the Losers," which is like a little on the
a little too much.
So, fine. But then we have a giant battle. There's some classic stuff going on there. They have to episode 1 this stuff where they blow up a central node to knock everything out.
The droid control ship is destroyed.
Yeah. It's a trope, but it works.
For real.
Yeah.
So there's that, and then at least I remember when I was watching it the first time, because I don't think I knew, because I was, as we've said on the show, I watched it much, much later. I watched it in like 2010 when I saw this episode. So I don't think that I was fully aware like I may have known that Dax died, but I didn't know how.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, because it was such a thing the months leading
Yeah.
up. Like
So
Terry
then-
Farrell's leaving the show. What it was.
Well,
very
I wasn't aware of it when it happened, so
Well, of course not.
so
Yeah,
I didn't,
exactly.
So I didn't see it until later.
So
But when-
watching it.
So when it was happening, it's like I knew that something happened, and then all of a sudden, it's like it felt very anticlimactic, as it were. It felt very similar to Tasha Yar's death, where it was just like kind of, and
Yeah, exactly.
the only thing that she did have is she did have a scene where she got to interact with the characters while still technically alive at the end of the episode, whereas Yar was just a hologram.
Right.
So it's just interesting that this is the second main cast character death that happened in Star Trek.
Right.
While it was running, it's like, I mean, we've seen characters die. Okay, fine. But like main central cast dies, gets replaced.
Right.
And this is like this is only the second time this has happened. And it's just really, really tough, especially because, a lot of us like this character. So yeah. And the scene where like Worf does the howl to Stovokor, like that was really good.
Powerful. Absolutely.
And then there's just like this heart-wrenching scene where it's Cisco at the coffin, where he's just like he's lost his friend twice over.
Yeah.
This is just awful. And then Cisco's just like, I'm done with this crap. I gotta go home. And and then very similar to like the ending of like the Circle, he's just sitting there scrubbing potatoes in New Orleans.
And that's his piece, scrubbing potatoes, I guess.
Like when Cisco said I need you right now, I was like, man, so many powerful lines in this whole episode, alone and stuff like that.
Yep.
Big time. All right.
To this episode.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap it up. Let's have a favorite and a least favorite. Briefly, LeRon, go for it.
You already know, favorite, sound of her voice. Sound of her voice, like if it wasn't one of those people like that I get burnt out, like I could watch that episode like twice in a row, back to back, and stuff like that. But
that was us. That was my wife and I watching The Last of Us. We did watch that once back to back. We're like, oh, it's so good. Let's go back again. But I totally feel you.
Here's the one thing I'm going to say: season 6 of DS9 is one of my favorite seasons of Star Trek. I can name off quite a few seasons, like season 4 of Voyager. Ooh, boy, chef's kiss on that season. Season 2 of Discovery. But yeah. Sound of Her Voice is definitely my favorite episode of out of these 6 that we did. Profit and Lace is probably going to be the worst, and it's just because, like I said, there's just enough cringeworthy stuff going on in there that
Yeah, but load up the cringe. but
overall, if you're looking for a good season of Star Trek to watch, Season 6 of Star Trek Deep Space Nine is probably one of the best seasons out there to watch. And I'm going to say, if you want to introduce someone to DS9, start with the finale of season 5 and just let them watch the first 7 episodes of the Dominion War arc.
Yeah. Yep.
They'll be hooked. Especially if they love that type of sci-fi. Especially if they love that type of sci-fi.
Yep. Big time. All right, Peter.
I have a little bit of a hard time picking a favorite. But I think I'm also going to go with The Sound of Her Voice, simply because of it's a really, really good character study episode.
Yeah.
So it's multiple characters. It's not just like a single person. So because of that, I think that gets to be my number one. In terms of worst, for me, it's a little bit of a tie between Prophet and Lace and Time's Orphan, just because Time's Orphan just has a really, really weak story, and I'm not sure what the message is.
Yeah.
Prophet and Lace, for all of its just really dumb shenanigans and really bad landing, it at least was trying to do something. I don't know what Time's Orphan was really trying to do. Other than like, hey, let's do some O'Brien family stuff and show how important his family is to O'Brien. We've seen that before.
Yeah, exactly. Man, I'm going to have to echo you, and I'm going to switch gears because I also would have chosen Prophet and Lace, but I think it's also going to be Time's Orphan because, you're right. It wasn't really doing anything, and it was low stakes. you kind of knew it was going to be okay. O'Brien wasn't going to leave the characters weren't going to leave the show to, we got to go with her to the rehab colony or whatever. It just wasn't going to go down like that. But for me, the favorite, and again, this is probably not hard to pick out, is Valiant. Just because, at that time I was the same age as the Red Squad kids, and I would be like, what if me and my buddies had a Defiant ship and decided we were going to go to war? And I love that, I do love when they blow the ship up and they see all the explosions, and then the explosions clear and they turn down and they goes, did we miss the target? No, we hit it. It didn't work. And it was like, oh yeah, because
no.
Fucking idiots. So I found that
you aren't fully trained Starfleet officers that had a fully manned crew of science and tactical officers.
Yeah, because a fully trained officer would have said, yeah, we'll be back with about 10 other ships and we'll give this a shot. But that's it. Well, cool. We will get in our next episode into the first several episodes of the 6th season of Star Trek Voyager. LeRon, you have been terrific. You are now part of the squad. So we're going to have you back. We usually have our guest stars back every 2 to 3 months just to keep things fresh. So we will get you on the schedule coming up. But where do people find you out there in the blogosphere, webosphere, internets world?
Okay, well, you can hit me up. Basically, all my socials are the same. So across the landscape, just look at Exodus 803, EXODUS 803. You can find me. I'm definitely active on Blue Sky. Until I divorce myself from Meta, you can find me on Instagram, Threads, and all that stuff. I have my YouTube channel, which has been on a little bit of a hiatus for lately, but it's also Exodus 803, youtube.com/Exodus 803. I'm a member of the Bossworks Network family, so stuff like that. So you can find me on various Bossworks adventures like the Boss Rush podcast, Boss Rush After Dark, some of the book clubs. But yeah, I'm out there. You can always, if you ever want to talk to me about Star Trek, definitely, I will talk to you all day about Star Trek. And yeah, I understand, as far as this show goes, I gave the nicest score to Section 31, but at the same time, I always feel like there's Star Trek in there there's some Star Trek for somebody out there in Section 31. Definitely ping somebody out there.
Somebody somewhere. That's 16%, no doubt about it. Peter, what about you? Where do people find you?
You can find me around the interwebs at Petrus Aquinas across most platforms. I'm not really active, but if you ping me, I might say something. You can generally find me more on Discord, like the Sacred Friends Unite Discord. You can also find me on ELH's Twitch and YouTube channel, where I am now playing a Temerian in a Star Trek RPG.
Peter with his arms wide.
Peter with the dice rolled. Oh no!
I am not that good with that stuff, but I knew exactly. I was like, oh, Darmok, you go.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot. When I roll the dice, it's going to be a lot of Shaka when the walls fell.
Oh my goodness!
That's how I roll.
Yeah.
So you can also find me behind the scenes at Starship Excelsior.
Totally awesome. And as always, you can find me out there on the main socials, Blue Sky, Threads, and Instagram. I am at the C3, TheCeeThree. Also, my life is locked up in those Discords. Our SFU Discord is the best place to have great geek discussions. That's where we stay the most active. If you have thoughts about this episode, want to talk about Section 31, hit us up there. Also, again, secretfriendsunite@gmail.com. Our mailbag, drop us a note. We'll read it on the show. And this has been absolutely terrific. So, gentlemen, we will see you in the future. As always, I'm going to tell you that sharing is caring and to keep on trekking.
Peace and long life.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and podcast services around the galaxy, as well as video on our YouTube channel. You can support Secret Friends Unite by becoming a Patreon member, get bonus programs and more over at patreon.com/secretfriendsunite. Join our Discord community for even more discussions on all things geek. For all the latest updates on Secret Friends Unite, make sure to follow us on Threads at secret.friends.unite and visit secretfriendsunite.com. Find our merchandise at TeePublic and Redbubble. Thanks for listening, and may the Force live long and prosper.
Hey, Secret Friends listeners, it's Charlie here talking to you. My camera's being funny, so I apologize. But I have a special guest with a special message to kind of punctuate the show that you're listening to. And so without further ado, here we go. Thanks a lot. Hey there, Secret Friends Unite listeners. Before we get to this week's podcast that you've tuned into, I've got a special friend of mine who is going to talk to us about some things that we can do to help the folks in Los Angeles. This is esteemed actor John Billingsley from Star Trek Enterprise, Dr. Phlox, amongst many other things. John, how are you today?
I'm wonderful, bearing up. It is a difficult time to be an American citizen. It's a difficult time to be a Los Angelian. The fires are still raging. We have made great progress, but I appreciate your having me on, giving me a chance to say a couple of words about an organization that I think is doing tremendous work to help people in need, the Hollywood Food Coalition.
Yes. Tell us all about it. How can people help? We've been talking on our show for a couple of weeks now about ways that they can look at the website and investigate, but what's the best way that people can really contribute?
Well, I mean, it's pretty straightforward, as is always the case. In the end, there's not a not-for-profit out there that isn't ultimately interested in seeing if we can get donations. We have a better sense of how to use the money. That said, if you happen to be in Los Angeles and you want to volunteer, we can always use people to help us come cook and serve and help process the food that we rescue. The key thing to know about us is that what we are doing is rescuing food from all over the city and sharing it with social service organizations who can get it to people in need. So when you're working with us, you're effectively helping to support 150 other social service organizations. And I think one of the key things about these horrible fires is that while there is an obvious and wrenching pain because a lot of people have lost their houses, one of the things that is a reality is that a lot of the people who may not have lost their houses are going to be impacted by the fact that money is going to be hard to come by.
Right.
So for people who are living on the streets, for people who are indigent, for people who are relying on social service organizations to help take care of them, the need is only going to get greater. So in that sense, I would only say, yes, it is possible to make a donation to a number of wonderful organizations, obviously the Red Cross, that might be helping some of the people who have faced particular fire-related catastrophes. If you're helping the Food Coalition, what you're really doing is helping to sustain an ecosystem, which is critical to our city's survival.
Right. Absolutely. And the website again?
It's HOFOCO.org. HOFOCO.
Exactly.
HOFOCO.org. Like all websites, you fish around, you hear our story, you learn about the wide range of things we do. We serve a hot meal to all comers 7 nights a week. We help provide for hundreds of people's emergency needs. And again, we rescue almost 2.5 to 3 million pounds of food a year that we share with other organizations. The other thing, since you give me the opportunity to chat, and I appreciate it, that is really important to me because this is Star Trek. Coalition was the word that appealed to me when I joined this organization 8 years ago. The idea that it takes a village of people who are learning how to do things together that they cannot do separately. When it comes to food rescue, you have to put a fleet of trucks out there. You got to find places to take that food to keep it refrigerated. You got to figure out how to reach populations that might not be easily reachable. It truly takes a ton of groups working together to figure out how to provide for a city as big as ours, millions and millions and millions of people. I'm really proud of the efforts we've taken in the last few years to help build that collective, collaborative infrastructure. And I think that's really one of the keys as we face this political crisis we're in. Cities getting stronger by not relying necessarily on a dismissive federal government, figuring out how not-for-profits can band together to work together more effectively.
Absolutely. That's great. So again, hofoco.org.
ORG, yes. I am always forgetting my orgs and my nets.
Orgs and my nets.
Hofoco.org.
Absolutely.
Hofoco.org.
Oh, my goodness. Well, John, thanks for jumping in with me and all of our friends over at Secret Friends. No matter what show you're listening to, if you're on our Patreon, please go investigate, give, and help our fellow folks in Los Angeles.
And let me throw one last thing out. Trek Talks, which is the annual Lollapalooza 8-hour digital telethon to raise money for the Hollywood Food Coalition. We've postponed it, but we haven't canceled it. It'll be back probably in April, so keep watching the skies.
You better believe it. All right. Thank you again, John, so much. And I always like to say, keep on trekking.
Thank you.